Looking for dinner ideas that are fast, flavorful, and not boring and bland? Well, in this video, I'm gonna show you 3 mouth-watering tostada recipes that can all be done in under 30 minutes, so they're perfect for those busy weeknights. We're talking grilled steak with a spicy jalapeno sour cream salsa, stewed chicken with fajita vegetables on top, and blackened shrimp with a roasted corn salsa. These recipes are quick, they're easy, and they're absolutely delicious. And by the end of this video, you're gonna have 3 go-to recipes that are definitely gonna level up your weeknight dinner game. So with that, let's get to it. So one of the things that I like to do when coming up with tostada recipes is to think of it sort of like a canapé hors d'oeuvre, where you have a base, a spread, a filling, and then a garnish. And obviously the base for tostadas are gonna be these tortilla shells. And these are just the regular store-bought tostada shells. There's nothing special here. I think I got them for like $2 or $3 at Aldi. And as far as spreads are concerned, you wanna think of something that's gonna hold the filling in place and prevent it from falling off of the tostada. So cheese, guacamole, refried beans, even cooked rice could be used. And as far as fillings go, that's where the meats come in. So the grilled steak, the stewed chicken, the blackened shrimp that I'm gonna be doing today. If you're a vegetarian, you might try some grilled mushrooms or some tofu or something like that. And for the garnish, you could use some type of salsa or sour cream or guacamole or some type of cheese like a Mexican crumbled cheese. There are all kinds of ways that you could take this and put these things together, so you kind of have limitless opportunities when making tostadas. That's why they make such great weeknight recipes. So we're gonna start things off with our grilled steak tostada, and for the jalapeno sour cream sauce, I've got 6 ounces of sour cream ready to go inside the food processor, as well as 1/4 of a lime, cilantro, salt, and 1/2 of a jalapeno with the ribs still attached, and a small piece of a green bell pepper. And to create a little bit more depth of flavor, I'm gonna drop the peppers under the broiler for a few minutes to get a little bit of browning, and this only takes about 5 minutes. You don't wanna go overboard here. So with these ready to go now, we can go ahead and jump over to the other side of the kitchen along with the remaining ingredients and go ahead and combine everything together inside the food processor. And when blending sour cream inside of a food processor, you want to be careful because too much blending will cause it to break down and become watery. So using the pulse button here isn't a bad idea. And it really shouldn't take all that much to break everything apart, especially with the peppers already being softened up from cooking in the oven. And make sure to give it a taste, then adjust the salt if needed, and then we can move on to getting our steak ready. And I've got a few small pieces of sirloin steak here, and all I'm doing with these is seasoning both sides with salt, and I've also made a quick spice rub that's made of equal parts guajillo powder, garlic powder, and oregano. So with the steaks ready to go now, we can hop over to the stovetop, and I've got a grill pan here that I'm going to set on my biggest burner and set the heat to high. Give the steaks a light coating with any high smoke point oil, and when the pan is hot enough, go ahead and drop the steaks into the pan. And of course, if you don't have one of these grill pans, a regular saute pan will also work just fine, as would just heading outside and firing up an actual grill. But if you did that, it probably wouldn't be a 30-minute recipe anymore at that point, but it would be the best version of this particular recipe that one could make. And while I'm at it, I'll pointlessly make some crosshatch marks, and I say pointlessly because I'm going to be dicing the meat up, so it's not like you're going to see it in the end anyway. Although more complete surface browning does create more flavor, so I suppose it's not entirely pointless. And with the steaks that I'm using right now, they're pretty much at the right thickness to where once all the angles become browned, it will be medium rare on the inside. And it got a bit smoky there, but if you got a good exhaust system, you can get away with that. So the next step is to get the tortillas ready, but first I'm going to spread a layer of refried beans on top, and this is just the stuff that comes straight out of the can, and the biggest challenge here is getting it to cooperate, but just stick with it for a few minutes and you'll eventually get there. Then drop it into a low temperature oven that's set somewhere around 200 degrees, and while that heats up, we can get our steak diced up. And I've noticed that some people like to cut steak into strips when making tostadas, and while that may look good in pictures, it isn't all that practical when you go to eat it, so I'm going to dice it into small squares. So with the steak all cut up now, I've taken the tortilla out of the oven and we can get this thing assembled. So start by piling the steak on top of the layer of refried beans, and follow that up by spooning a little bit of our spicy jalapeno cream sauce on top of the steak, and I'm going to finish this one off with some crumbled queso fresco cheese. So for the chicken tostadas today, I'm going to be using boneless, skinless chicken thighs, and the reason why I'm doing that is, one, because it's a lot cheaper, but it's also a lot less likely to dry out. And for those of you who like to use chicken breasts simply because they have fewer calories, the thing is with poultry meat is that poultry doesn't have intermuscular fat or marbling in the same way that steaks do. So if you want to tone down the calories on these things, simply trim the fat from around the edges, and once you do that, you're going to be somewhere in the range of where breast meat is. And you're going to have more flavor, you're going to spend less money, and it's not going to be dried out. So thighs are the better option. Okay, for this one I'm going to start with a regular saute pan with the heat set between medium and high, and along with a small glug of oil, I've seasoned a few pieces of chicken with salt and pepper off camera, and I'll place those into the pan. And you want to make sure to give these things a few minutes to develop a good crust underneath before flipping them or fidgeting with them too much. But once you start to see good color development along the edges, you should be good to flip them over to sear off the other side as well. And after a few more minutes on the second side, you can pull the chicken out of the pan and place it onto a sheet tray and toss it into a 350-degree oven. And unfortunately, I forgot to press record on the camera, so you'll just have to take my word that they're in the oven. But that aside, the next step is to add a small handful of sliced green bell peppers and onions into the pan. Give it a few stirs and add a pinch of salt for seasoning, and something that also helps here is to add a small splash of water into the pan to pull up some of the shit that's stuck to the bottom. The flavor that comes from caramelization and browning contributes more flavor than anything else does when making fajitas. And that is essentially what we are making here, is a chicken fajita mixture. And once the vegetables are softened up a little bit and they have a little bit of color along their edges, the chicken should be fully cooked through and ready to come out of the oven. And after allowing the chicken to rest for a few minutes and slicing it while you weren't looking, I'll go ahead and toss it back into the pan along with the onions and peppers. And I also like tomatoes in this mixture, so why not toss in a few of those while we're at it? And with that, this is pretty much ready to go. So I've got a tortilla that I've lightly coated with a little bit of shredded Monterey Jack cheese, and all you have to do here is place some of the chicken fajita filling on top and place it into the oven for a few minutes, just enough to melt the cheese. And since I actually turned off the oven after taking out the chicken, and it's been about 10 minutes since then, and because it was around 350 then, it's probably somewhere in the range of 250 right now, which is perfect for this. And after coming out of the oven, I'm going to keep this one simple and just add a small dollop of sour cream on top. And with that, let's move on to our final recipe of the day, a blackened shrimp tostada. And for this one, I'm going to make a guacamole for the base. So I've got 2 small avocados that I've diced up, and to that I'll add 1/2 of a jalapeno diced along with roughly the same amount of diced onions, 2 tablespoons of chopped cilantro, the zest and juice of 1 lime, and a pinch of salt. And once you have all of this in your mixing bowl, take a fork and begin working it all together. And you don't want to break apart the avocados too much here. They're actually kind of close to the size that you want the chunks to be to begin with. So all I do here is pretty much just mash it up until it becomes cohesive. And I'd say this is looking pretty good right here. And I also like to add tomatoes to my guacamole as well. Not only for their flavor, but I think it also gives it a really nice color contrast. So with the guacamole all finished up now, let's move on to our roasted corn salsa. And the first ingredient for that is going to be 4 ounces of corn that's been lightly browned in the oven, along with 1/2 of a diced jalapeno, 1 tablespoon of diced red onion, 1 tablespoon of chopped cilantro, the juice of 1/4 of a lime, and finally a pinch of salt. And this one's easy, just give the whole thing a stir with a spoon and it's ready to go. And with that, when it comes to shrimp tostadas, I think smaller shrimp work better. Larger shrimp are more difficult to handle on top of tostadas without making a mess, and there's no point to cutting up larger, more expensive shrimp to begin with, so I typically use smaller shrimp when making tostadas. And I'm going to be using these 4160 shrimp today. So to get these ready, start by seasoning them with kosher salt, and for the blackening spice mix, I've made this really easy. Just combine equal parts paprika, oregano, basil, thyme, and cayenne pepper. Give everything a good stir to combine, and let's jump over to the stove top, and with a non-stick skillet between medium and high heat, add a small amount of olive oil, and when the pan heats up, add a layer of shrimp to the bottom, but don't overcrowd the pan. And since these are smaller shrimp, they are going to cook pretty quickly. A small amount of surface browning is okay, but they will become tough if they're left in the pan for too long. It's kind of a delicate balance between toasting the spices to bloom their flavors and not trying to overcook the shrimp at the same time. So after 2 to 3 minutes on the burner, these can be unloaded into a mixing bowl, and while I'm at it, why not add a little bit more flavor into these things with 1 to 2 minced garlic cloves, a little bit of lime zest, orange zest, a little bit of juice from each of them, and a 1/4 teaspoon of red chili flakes. And I was going to add a little bit of chopped fresh oregano as well, but I forgot to pick that up at the store, so just kind of like imagine that being there, I guess. So with everything all finished up now, we can get this whole thing plated up. Start with a preheated tostada shell, spread out a hefty layer of guacamole, arrange a good-sized portion of our blackened shrimp on top of that, and finally top it all off with some of our roasted corn salsa. And make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know what you think of these recipes in the comments. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on these things. But with that, we've reached the end of the video, so as always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.